and thank you for joining me here on So Stitch Hex. Today I'm going to be talking about magic in the dorms. What I mean by dorms is any space like a dorm at school, a suite situation, even apartments qualify for this. And if you wanted to go so far as to think about what would happen with the space in your own partner or just another housemate, I'm specifically thinking of when you are sharing a room with an individual, like when I had a dorm and I was sharing with other people. You have to worry about if someone is going to mess with your altar, which you've set up. Do you need to have an altar that you put up for use and then take back down? What should they do? Now, of course, you should respect their space and respect their beliefs, but they should also respect yours, and they should not touch your things. That can be a problem. Another thing I noticed when in dorms, I specifically had someone who, for a brief second, tried to say that if they saw we had candles, even if they had been lit at some point, they would cut the wicks. Like, they said that was something that could happen. I'm like, this is my spiritual practice. You are not touching my things. And that was resolved quickly, especially because you're not allowed to burn candles inside of the dorms. That does not mean you cannot go outside and burn candles, which is something that I did. There's also weird rules with working with like oil diffusers, like the electrical ones. You have to be careful because some of them run off candles, some of them are just electric, and some of these things are not allowed in the dorms. You have to go through the list to see what is allowed in your space. You can't have certain herbs in your space because they are illegal for the campus life. So these are things you have to look up if you live in a dorm. These added restrictions can be trying on someone with a different craft, someone who uses the poison path, or someone who just generally likes candles, which a lot of witches use candles. It's just how it is. So other different problems can arise besides just who is living in your direct space. This also takes away from your private time. Something you would normally have to think about is asking for your time alone if you want time with your deities, time to meditate, time in the silence just to speak with your god or goddess. You can't necessarily expect them to be out for a certain amount of time, and even if they tell you they're going to be out, this is also their home, so they could be home early. You just need to know how you can practice safely and how you can work with your deities in a proper manner that is comfortable for you and comfortable for others. I personally don't really like to pray in front of other people. If I do, and it's a super emergency, and it's just kind of like, oh my goodness, here we go. Like, I forgot I was supposed to do this. Give me a minute. And I just kind of am out. But I found that when you try to, even if it's just a 5-minute meditation or a small prayer with other people, people want to know, what are you doing? They want to ask you questions. They break that space. I've tried to take a few minutes for my daily meditations when I wasn't going to have time during the day. I tried to take it while I was in a group setting. I got in my own Zen moment. And then next thing I know, people are bugging me. Like, are you okay? What's going on? Like, I just need a moment. Like, I can sit here. Calm down. But that's not how things are. So you have to think about this when you're living in a dorm or with someone else in your room. It is up to the other person to respect you and your space, but it's up to you to also provide the opportunity for that respect to be given. Don't do things that are going to freak people out on purpose. Like, don't have some crazy full nude ritual if you and your housemate normally are completely clothed and you haven't discussed nudity with them. Don't go skyclad if you have not asked. And they probably will want to be absent for that. So you'd want to ask if you could have some space to yourself. If you are not out, perhaps tell them that you would like some time for, private practice or private study, or just general study time alone. Set a time frame and have a timer so that you don't get interrupted. You could say that you are going to have, like, asking for someone over. Maybe you have to ask permission for the other person to invite spirits in. Most people don't understand what this is. Just showing tarot cards to someone who doesn't know will ask you if you're bringing demons into their house, because most people have no idea what the hell is going on. So this is something that you should consider is, do you need to ask their permission before you bring a spirit into the dwelling in which they also live? Or if they're going to be very confused and think you're summoning Satan. So these are some other things. One of the fun things to think about is ways to do magic while in a dorm setting, while you have other things going on. So you have school, you have classes, and you have homework assignments, you have big project assignments, group assignments. What are some little magic things that you can do in this kind of setting? Because you may not have the time for a big elaborate ritual or anything like that. Well, one of the things that I really enjoyed was sigil magic. You could do what I saw in Tumblr referred to as guerrilla witchcraft, which is just the idea of guerrilla warfare, and they were putting sigils out to protect, specifically in this case, young women from sexual harassment, sexual assault on the campus. And where the dorm I lived in for a while had a lot of problems with this. The idea with the sigils would be that there would always be people watching, or the person would never be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or that they would never see this person, so they would just be invisible to attackers or potential attackers. And that was the idea of this guerrilla warfare, putting the sigils out in chalk so it's not actual vandalism. Where the public university that I went to was an open campus, so people could just walk onto it. Of course, this meant that there wasn't just students doing chalk, there was also just random chalk designs occasionally, so no one would really notice these random drawings. You could do it so that the drawing itself was the sigil, and as it's washed away, it needs to be renewed, or as it's washed away, it solidifies it into the surface in which you drew it, so that it stays there, and you can just add to it each time you draw it. This is one way you could do magic in a dorm style setting, because there's lots of people who live there, lots of people who need protection. Drawing it on the ground means it's public. Maybe it's charged by the number of people who walk over it if it's in a very largely populated area, a main walkway. You could also do sigils for grades. Now, this is one of my favorites because I'm one of those people who either I have to study it constantly until it's memorized, or I can't study it at all. If I look at it, I will forget it. There's this one class I took where the harder I studied, the worse my grades got. And as we approached the midterm, I was starting to freak out, so I just stopped. I was like, okay, I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop and see what I learned just from class. I'm not going to take time outside of class. And that actually helped me. This is not something for everyone. Not everyone is this way at all. But for me, I stopped studying altogether. I looked at it at class and then forgot about it. And then I'd come in, oh, we had a test today? Okay, here we go. 72 questions. Surprise what I get. And I'd do better. I started doing a little sigil on there that I came up with for good grades. It's to promote a plus, something between a C- and a plus, and it has the drawing of both mixed into it, with the upside down of it being a D or an F, so that I could, in theory, pass and get the grades that I wanted. This is a type of sigil magic you could do, just, little example. That was pretty fun, for me at least, and something I greatly enjoyed. Being in a dorm, this is something really simple. It doesn't take that much time. You can doodle it while you're in class, if you can multitask. I doodle. It helps me memorize more information, connecting it with the image that's on the page, so seeing the image helps me remember the class. Or you can doodle it, while you're doing your homework as a brief break in between. This can also be time for meditation, time for deeper thought. So this works well for students who live in a dorm, and it's not a disruptive type of ritual if you have a roommate who doesn't go anywhere and who, like me, just stayed inside all day. I don't really go out that much. Keeping something to do that's small can help you practice. It can also be something to bond with your deity. Maybe you write something for them that when you draw the sigil on something, maybe it's symbolizing them and it's sending love their way. Just something. You can do this, and it's not a very big type of magic, but it's magic you can do in your dorm really easily without bothering anyone. You could also make little mojo bags. Little baggies that you put herbs and other things in. You could do some for nightmares. I've made one for a housemate or dorm mate before who was having really bad nightmares. I made one for her to try to help. You could do little things like one for homesickness for yourself or for others. You can do things to promote positivity, to help remember things. You can practice with other herbs that are allowed. You can use peppermint tea to help you remember. If you eat or drink peppermint while you are studying, you're more likely to remember it later. I would have a peppermint while studying and then a peppermint while in class, and sometimes that would help me. And these are herbs that you can have in a dorm. Now, you do have to check to make sure you're not breaking any rules. You don't want to accidentally have something that's against school policy. These are things you need to research yourself. I can't just tell you what your school's policies are, because any school can have any sort of odd rule comparative to mine that I went to. So dorm magic is basically my way of saying either practicing in the broom closet at a school or practicing in cohabitance with other people who may or may not be into witchcraft. This also applies to people who live in apartments. If you live in an apartment with another individual, you do have to be mindful of those other individuals. Even if you don't live in the same complex as them, you have to be mindful of what you put out in your common spaces. You don't really have a yard per se, so you can't really have a garden, but you may have 2 or 3 pots out on your little mini patio or whatever. If it's not a blocked off patio but a shared patio with other people, you may not even be allowed to put out plants of any sort. You may not even be able to put out signage on your door. You have to look into these things. They could go against your lease. But this also can affect your relationship with the other tenants who live there. You have to be careful not to do something that's going to cause you to be in danger. So you do have to be wise, know who your neighbors are, know if you're safe, because I don't think we should be in a place where we should be afraid, but there's still the occasion that it could happen. So be mindful of your neighbors, be mindful of your roommates and your housemates. Maybe you have the type of house that you could just put up an altar in the middle of the living room and no one cares. But you might not be. You might be in a situation where you have to put it up and take it down daily. This is just the way things are if you're in a shared space. The best I can suggest you do is to have kind of a mediation conversation with this other person or persons to come to a common ground where you can practice your faith in a good way that benefits you, and they can feel comfortable and not feel either that they are dominating your space, that you are dominating theirs. So being mindful of others. This works the same if you are also in a married situation and your partner doesn't practice. Maybe they're uncomfortable with your practice, but that's your home too. So you have to find a middle ground where everyone is happy and compromise if you have to. Alright, so this has just been me discussing magic in dorms and apartments. I hope you all have a blessed week. Alright, bye!